Welcome to the Coming Home Well podcast, the show that educates, supports, and advocates for the veteran community. Your host, Dr. Tyler Piron, U.S. Army retired, will bring you exciting conversations with amazing guests about resources, research, and military history, all geared to helping our warriors to come home well. Here's your host, Dr. Tyler Piron.
Welcome back to Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Tyler Piron, and today we're going to talk about something that is very, very common, the challenges in a law enforcement family, dealing with all the things that happen and how do you deal with them. To help us with that, we have Cyndi Doyle, who's a licensed therapist, the wife of a police officer, and an author. And she's written quite an amazing book, Hold the Line, The Essential Guide to Protecting Your Law Enforcement Relationship. Now, I don't know if you're like me, and I've read a million things. There's all sorts of law enforcement groups and chats, and it comes up weekly, if not daily, about the challenges of dealing with a law enforcement family and dealing with the stresses that come along with it, whether it's shift work, whether it's dealing with traumatic incidents, or just dealing with bad things that happen to people. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of strain in the relationship. And it's really difficult for someone who is not involved in the horrible things to express it without sort of going over it over and over again. And that's a really tough thing. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really honored to be on the podcast. So thank you.
So there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but I sort of mentioned it in the beginning. Dealing with all the challenges is very similar to our military audience. You're dealing with some things that the vast majority of people will never have to deal with. Crimes against children and people dying, and often in very gruesome ways. And a lot of things where you feel helpless or hopeless, but you still have to respond. How much does that play a part in the law enforcement relationship?
So I'm going to take that question in like 5 different directions, if you don't mind. So yes. As a clinician, I thought exactly what I was looking for was trauma. I thought being married to a law enforcement officer, I had this nailed because I was going to be looking for those critical incidences. I was going to be looking for him coming home with calls with gray matter in it, right? So I thought I was going to be looking for those types of calls, and then I would like have eyes on him, right? Mm-hmm. And I would be watching him to see the fallout from this trauma or this critical incident or whatever he went to. Of course, it's day in and day out, really, right? It's the 1,000 drops of poison. It's not so much the one incident. It's the accumulation of things over and over again that causes the problem. It's also something that I had not even considered, which is the training that keeps our officers safe conditions the brain in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. So it's muscle memory, and we train the brain to operate at work, and it learns how to, you're mentioning like what you see. And I think I'm going to get this stat wrong and I need to learn it better, but I think it's something like in a first responder's career, they see something like 125, I don't remember how many incidents in their career, whereas the general public sees like 3, right? So the brain has to adapt over and over and over again. And what we don't consider, what I didn't consider even as a clinician, was how the brain was changing in order to be able to do the job day in and day out.
Which explains a lot of the Black Gallows humor and
dark humor is a thing, right?
Huge.
But it's also like the head on the swivel, right? Mm-hmm. That's the thing, that it's little stuff like this that annoyed can I swear? Mm-hmm. That annoyed the crap out of me. I'll say crap because I'm not sure.
Sure.
But that annoyed the crap out of me, where we'd go to dinner and he'd be like looking around and I'd be like, you ain't listening to me. And it wasn't until I started to understand that his brain had adjusted to be able to do the job that he was doing. There's not like some switch, right? Some light switch that turns on, off on switch. Like, I've come home now, so hey, brain, let's switch to plan B, brain B, and operate this way, right? That's not how it works. Compartmentalizing, right? There's so many different aspects here that the brain adjusts, the training that allows our first responders to do their job day in and day out, in addition to the critical incidences, the trauma, the exposure, the small drops of poison over and over again. That's a big part of it. So does it impact it? Well, yes, of course.
Yes.
But there's also this other weird impact that that people don't consider.
Yes, the steady drip of bad versus the big bad.
And it doesn't even have to be the bad, right? So it's the steady drip of
hypervigilance.
Everybody calls first responders on their best day, right? So it slowly adjusts the mindset, right? Like, oh, what do you mean you had a stomach ache at 2:00 in the afternoon and it's now 3:30 a.m. and you're getting my butt out of bed at the fire station to be able to come and, take care of your stomach ache. It's the cynicism, right? It's the mindset that shifts. It's compartmentalization. It's the training over and over again.
Oh, wait.
Do what?
Fact recognition.
Yeah.
Just the reality of, we have an old saying at the sheriff's office when I was there is, when you're a juvenile court with, family and all the dramas, it's good people at their worst day. And then at the criminal court, it's bad people at their best day.
That's totally true.
It is. It's 100% true. Because all the drama is going to be in the family and juvenile court. Fights, the challenges, with all that. And meanwhile, people in big trouble are trying to behave to look good to maybe not go to prison. It's crazy. But you recognize that over time, and it's so cynical. But it's just fact recognition of, that's where the problems are going to be.
Yes. And then there's an overgeneralization because the brain is now looking for that, right? I'll take law enforcement. Law enforcement is constantly scanning for danger, right? Yep. That's what you do. Every single call could equal death. I hadn't thought about that initially. Now, I think if I was starting in the field, I think I would be like, oh my God, don't ever pull anybody over because they could have a gun and they could shoot you. But like you could just be sitting in your car now and get ambushed, right? But that was different when we started. And like every single thing could be death. And so the brain then gets conditioned to think that the world is an unsafe place. And that vision. So it can go, like we can go all kinds of directions with that. But to answer your question, yes, not only does the exposure impact, but also the training impacts. So,
And you get told about the worst case scenarios. And it's never, like, oh, it's a really minor thing. No, they use the worst case where somebody failed to do something the right way. They didn't handcuff someone properly. They didn't do X, Y, and Z. And because of that, X, Y, and Z bad thing happened. Somebody was killed, somebody escaped, whatever.
And you learn from that.
You do.
That piece of knowledge then becomes, I need to watch for that. The worst case scenario, like what ifing worst case scenario stuff is so important for you to come home.
Right.
Right.
And for it's our the first most responders benign to come situations that go violent very quickly.
Yeah. But like by the way, that doesn't turn off, right? It doesn't turn off when they get home. And so that's where all of it comes home, and families don't understand what's coming home or why. And they say stuff like, why can't you just turn it off? I'm not one of your citizens. Why do you have to be so negative? Why are you so cynical? Like there's a reason.
Why are you so strict, Dad? Not everybody's bad.
Yep.
That's true. Not everybody is. However,
maybe this is the one. Yeah.
So you never read about, these people that are, with crimes against children. It's not the sketchy guy that nobody trusted. It's always the trusted person. That's how they work. Everybody knows them. They're well known. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
It's like if I said Boy Scout leader, what do you think?
Right. Father O'Flanagan. or pick one. We're in our jurisdiction where I'm at in Virginia. There is right now a case where 11 victims, at least 11 at an
Yeah.
elementary school.
Yeah.
And, like, oh, well liked and everything, all these
Yeah.
things. And the parents are just, absolutely devastated
Hmm.
because, it's a nice area, etc. Well respected, it's been around. And that's where that hypervigilance, in a way, pays off. But at the same
Absolutely.
time, it can cause friction when you can't turn it off, or when it's taken as excessive or not appropriate to the situation. And I think
Or
that's where the
shows up
challenge comes in.
or shows up when you don't want it to show up, right? And people don't understand, spouses, families don't understand, partners don't understand that that's what's going on, is that the brain doesn't get to distinguish, or it takes a lot of work, right?
Hmm.
It takes a lot of work to go, oh, dang, I don't want to be here in this mindset, in this hypervigilant biological state. So let me shift this around. So there you
So
go.
how do you help a spouse like that? That's in the hey, I'm in a combat zone. I'm on shift. I'm for some reason in this nervous system where I need to be more vigilant, hyper vigilant, whatever we want to call it, where you're not fully engaged. So how do you help them navigate that?
So I think there's two things. First of all, education is key, right?
Hmm.
So both people, whether that's your veteran, your military, your active military, your first responder, whoever it is, has to understand that their brain gets conditioned. It's a voluntary. It's like your heart, right?
Hmm.
Your brain just clicks in. Your brain's lazy, and it has these neural pathways, and it's like, hey, I got this. We've been in this environment. I know how to handle it. And so we have to be smarter than our brains sometimes.
Hmm.
So you have to educate both people, right? Spouse, family, also first responder, or your military folks, that this is happening. Then there has to be an awareness, right? So as a spouse, I can have an awareness, and that's what I do with him. And I'm like, hey, so I can, I just feel it, right? Like I can feel his angst, his agitation. He just gets kind of amplified a little bit because it's
Or
a
as
biological
my wife
process.
says, I know you better than you know you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, something's wrong. I know you better than you know you.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
nothing,
No,
nothing.
nothing. I'm fine. Um,
Exactly.
so so I think part of it is mindfulness, but
Hmm.
mindfulness in the sense of like, oh, okay, I'm sensing that something has shifted. So
Hmm.
that can be the individual that is experiencing the hypervigilance, or the person, the spouse, the family, whoever's there, that's that's also kind of experiencing it with the person. Sometimes because our first responders or our military are so used to that feeling,
Hmm.
they don't know that it turns on,
And it's
right?
often it feels normal.
Yes. Yes,
Like,
it's
hey, I
actually
feel normal right now.
absolutely.
And everybody else is going, what's wrong with them?
Yes. Why are they acting that way?
Right.
So I think if you're talking families or couples, I think what's
Hmm.
important is to have a conversation ahead of time, and to say, "Hey, how do you want me to let you know that I'm sensing this?" Right? Because
Hmm.
the wrong way to do it is like what I was saying, like, "Hey, just turn it off," right? Because that's not going to happen.
Right.
So I think having a conversation of like, when this happens, what do you need? What do
Hmm.
you need? Do you need to step away? Do we need to back up? This is what we do a lot. Do we need to walk at the end of the group? Do we need to um like find a space to go sit
Hmm.
down? A lot of times I'll be like, "Hey, do you want to go for a coffee? Do you want to sit in a
Hmm.
cafe or something?" And he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, yes." And I'm like, "I knew that. I knew that."
Just
Right?
getting a little too nervous system wound up.
Yes. So part of that is working as a team, right?
Hmm.
It's not I mean, I can give you therapeutic interventions, but that's not your audience. Your audience
Yeah.
is going to
This
know,
is
like,
really,
how do
yeah.
we do this as a team? So I
Hmm.
think it's Education. I think it's mindfulness and understanding what's going on, talking ahead of time to say like, hey, if this turns on, what's good for you?
We're stepping away for a quick break to hear from V2M Veteran Magazine. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the interview.
Looking for stories that truly matter to our military community? Discover V2M, the Veteran Magazine. Read online at v2mag.com.
So there are a lot of parallels between the law enforcement, military, first responders, the paramedics. There's going to be differences, of course, the types of work, the type of danger, the mechanisms in which it all happens. But there is a lot of commonality. You're working with people that are there, they've got your back in that cohort and among the greater tribe. And that's, the first responders within the military. You can be any sort of job. And the same thing with the first responders, the EMTs, the firefighters. Despite the friendly or sometimes not as friendly rivalries, they're still on the same team. But then when you go to retirement, this is one of the things that is so huge amongst all these audiences. That tribe sort of disappears. You're no longer in the tribe, especially if you move or, you're no longer interacting on a daily basis, especially with retirement. And that's huge. That institutional brotherhood is, huge and immense, but sometimes unfair amount of pressure on the marriage. And to be everything for that retired person. And I don't know how many times I've seen first responders or military folks that will go and serve 20, 25 years. They've been married the whole time. And within 2, 3, 4 years, their marriages are broken up. And it's sort of the opposite. You think, okay, they're no longer in these stressful situations. They're retired. But that's when the marriage breakups happen. And it's crazy to me. But there's a lot of reasons for it. So
absolutely.
What do you think? What's your views on these things? I set you up, but there is no wrong answers but it's anecdotal. It's a huge issue.
Yeah. And there's even, and you didn't mention it, but I'll throw it out there. I know there's some new research out there that I heard about at IACP Officer Safety and Wellness Conference, where I think it's 2 out of every 5 officer suicide now are retired officers. So it's significant, the mental health impact on retirement, because people don't prepare for retirement. Retirement's difficult in itself for any occupation. And it on average takes 18 months to 2 years to transition to that. I think what's challenging specifically for first responder military families and couples is that spouses and families become very adept at you being away. There's a joke among at least law enforcement spouses where it's like, this is the journey of a law enforcement spouse. Like, oh my gosh, I miss you so much. By the end of like year 15, we're like, when do I get the bed to myself? And I can fix everything with YouTube. So I think I know because I've lived it. My husband's retired now, and it's a huge transition that we're not prepared for. Officers lose purpose, or first responders lose their purpose. Military lose their purpose. Their skills.
Find your purpose in your tribe at the same time.
Your tribe, but also the skills, right? The skills that were so vital that made them good at what they do, and they use day in and day out, are now like, what do I do with this? Right. Who's going to value this? Who appreciates it? When am I going to be able to do it? I think there's also a brain aspect of this, because you have the hits of cortisol day in and day out, right? Of, oh my gosh, this is exciting. And you go home and you hang everything up and you go home and it's boring. It is
the
boring
dopamine hits are not coming in.
No. And your brain has to adapt to that stuff. And so what commonly happens is there's like, oh, well, let me figure out what to control and how to handle things at home. Well, guess what? There's already a system at home. So
I'm
now
going to
we're going
come
to have
fix all the
increased
things you've been
conflict.
messing up over the years.
Yes, yes. So now we're going to have increased conflict
Hmm.
and we're not going to be getting along. And I think there's so many different aspects to it, but I think we've hit the big ones. But couples on average are not prepared for what it's going to look like. And even my own husband, I tried to tell him what it was going to be like, that he got to a point at the department he was with and he's like, I need to go before they are going to ask me to leave. And I'm like, that sounds like a good idea, because politics were changing, the way things were moving were changing, the culture was different than when he started. And he's like, I think it's time. And I
Hmm.
said, you've done your 20. That's all we care about. Like, go when you want to go. And I tried to tell him, you need to have something to go to. You need to have
Hmm.
some purpose. You need to have it's friends outside of that world too. But the thing is talking about that is it feels like there's meaning and purpose again.
Hmm.
So what's interesting now is he's been retired 4 years now, I think. And when I go and speak, people will ask me, well, what's your husband doing in retirement? Is he doing something tangential to law enforcement? And I'll say, no, he's not doing anything with law enforcement. He's gone back to his first love, which is food and cooking.
Yeah.
And that is where like his whole Instagram is a bunch of food porn is what it
Eh.
is that he has made. You can ask him anything about wine. He's made friends with Italian winemakers in Italy. Like he had to find that though. And
Hmm.
I am a pampered princess now is what it is. But it was bumpy. 18 months, 2 years. I mean, we were committed to it, but there were times where I would be going to work and I would think in my mind, must be nice to get to stay home, right? That's
Yeah.
resentment, right? Where do you fit in? It's just a lot of conversation, a lot of purpose. You have to prepare and you have to have that balance your whole career. You cannot just magically the last 2 years, the last year, the last 6 months decide, oh, I'm suddenly going to have balance in my life and find purpose outside of my career. It needs to be starting now. It needs to be starting from day one when people start. They have to have different aspects of wellness in their life. They have to find
Hmm.
different purposes, whether that's parenting or friendship or spirituality, or you're going to go travel, you're going to see the world, whatever that is. It could be whatever you want, right? But you have to find that balance somewhere, and then as a couple, like navigate it together. It's going
Yeah,
to be
and
rough and bumpy though.
renegotiate, who does what and when and how.
Yep.
And literally, my wife will ask, "Hey, when's the next time you're going TDY or temporary travel?" Because I'll go for several months at a time.
Yeah.
I go overseas and I do stuff for work, and she has projects she wants to do without me being there.
Yes.
Like, and they're bigger projects, and they'll be a mess, and she knows I hate mess. And so, like, I get stressed when there's mess around. And so she'll plan for a trip, and she's very handy. But yes, that's one of the
Oh,
areas that we've worked on. But, the other half, and it's something so important, I think that a lot of people
yeah.
should know, is your job is what you do, not who you are.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I think that's in my
and that
book.
is so fundamental. And I know it
Yeah.
is. And that's the reason I brought it up. And you see that so much in the military, especially with the very
Absolutely.
strict rank structure. That becomes some folks' entire identity of I am a colonel, I am a sergeant major, I am a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, who is that? What was his name? And then you see him on the street and it's Bob. Like some
Yeah.
people cannot deal with that at all.
Yep.
And the most uh, successful folks that that navigated that challenge put that, hey, I'm proud of what I did. I did that, but that's not who I am. That's just what I
Hmm.
did for a while.
Hmm.
And I'm real proud of it. I did some great things. I got all these opportunities, but yeah, now I do this and I'm really excited about this next thing. And
Yeah,
that is
that's
just
it.
so cool.
Yes.
But it's a challenge for a lot of folks.
And like you said, it's a lot of negotiation along the way too. And that's
Hmm.
why sometimes there is no shame in your game if you need to go have a third party help you work through some of those things. It's better than getting
Hmm.
a divorce. It's
Oh
way
yeah.
less expensive to go to some therapy than get
Yes.
a divorce.
I have watched so many friends, and there was a period of time several years ago, it was a couple years after COVID. So maybe 22, 23, 24, somewhere around there. And I had so many friends that were of a sort of similar age, retiring and then getting divorced. And I'm like, it was like five or six within like 6 months. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is something in the water? I think there was a combination of COVID. I think it was a combination of a particular age. There was like a number of factors. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what the heck is going on? And I was looking for commonalities, and other than age, there was a lot of, there was some, but not enough that I could point at, any with any precision.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it was a lot of folks that were not really dealing with the change, and sometimes the change was with the spouse. Like the person retiring was fine, but the spouse was not used to either having them there, lack of freedom because they're always there.
Yes.
There's a different set of obligations, and so it's on both sides of
Hmm.
the relationship, which I think is an
Hmm.
important point. Is, hey, it's going to be hard for both of you, and it's not just like one-sided necessarily.
And retirement's hard in general anyway. Like
Hmm.
but there's an added layer on it. I still remember my mom when my father retired, and I said, how did you do this? I asked her because of mine, and she said, "Oh, that's when I started volunteering a whole lot." She got out of the house and started volunteering, right? So it's hard in general. And so
Hmm.
I think there's that added layer of purpose and cortisol and, separation that we get used to. And now you're here 24/7. Like
Hmm.
that, don't you have something to do? Yeah. Yeah. I think you're nailed it. Yes.
I literally have worked with people that they told me that they're this reason, and they're in their 70s and they were still working. And they said, "Well, my wife doesn't want me to retire." And I'm like, "Why is that?" And like, "Well, you have fun at work and it's just better." And I'm like, "Okay." And they enjoyed it, but it was sort of a running joke along them. And I'm like, "Oh, well." So let me ask you another question. So a lot of the military first responders often talk about feeling like aliens when they're dealing with the civilian population. When they feel different. They feel alike,
Well,
but enough different because the rules of engagement, the way you interact with folks is so different. In the military, it's very structured. With dealing with bad guys on the street, it's very different. When you're dealing with a hostile population, it's different. And law enforcement's the same exact way. Uh, you know, there's different populations you deal with. And so, how do you communicate with a partner who feels completely misunderstood by everyone else? They think that they're doing the right thing, but they're dealing with those populations that they're not 100% sure how they should be dealing with them in a quote unquote normal way.
so I have a question back. Are you talking about how does the spouse support and connect? Or are you talking
Or
about how we're
or
supposed to
both.
correct them? Because I don't do
Yeah.
that.
Well, communicate with a partner
Yeah.
with that is feeling those things like, hey, what do you do, as the spouse or as the partner going, hey, you're maybe misreading this situation, or maybe, hey,
Mhm.
there's a bunch of kids just having fun in the pool. There's no reason to be stressed, or, whatever it is.
So I think there's a couple different things. I have what I call my 5 C's. And so my 5 C's are cultural competency. The first one is like you have to understand what's happening, not just like what shifts are they on. You have to understand the impact on the brain. You have to understand what they're observing all the time. You have to understand the fact that things are black and white. You have to understand that things are action oriented. People are trained to react, not to sit through and talk about, well, I don't know. How do you want to do this? Let's have a group conference call. Like, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about our feelings. We're not going to, but there is an aspect of like, oh, well, it's the general public and I could be on film. at any point in time, or a call can get pulled up on it from a dispatcher and like broadcasted, right? So there's a perfection aspect. There's different things in regard to the culture that impact the military individual or the first responder, right? So cultural competency, that's the big part. The second part is connection, and connection is not communication. Connection is, do I understand your world? Am I understanding what's going on? Can I have, and the next one is compassion. So can I have compassion for the way you see the world? Can I understand that your mindset's been affected and that your mindset is different than mine? And can I have compassion around that? And then the other C is courage, which is, do I have the courage to speak up? So my speaking up many times is like, hey, so I'm really anxious that we're going to go to this thing and you're going to like call people out for being a-holes, or being idiots, or make your opinion known. And that makes me really anxious. I'm wondering if we could do it differently. So that could be like, that's some courage. And then the last one I have is not relevant to this, which is counter the impact. Like, how do we do it different? So I think when we're talking about, what I hear you say is mindset is different. Black, white, right, wrong, react. Your view of the world is very different. I think spouses' views change as well. We have some dark humor that I would never share outside of our circles.
I'm laughing because
assistant,
I was literally thinking about some of these as you were talking about the 5 C's. And the dark humor, there's and I'll share this, and it's less morbid than many of the other examples. Is as a special agent, I had to go to many autopsies. And there's something about going to an autopsy, no matter how horrible it is, you leave there starving to death every time. Like you
okay,
go and it could be 9 in the morning and you leave at like 10. And everybody, if it's, partners or 2 or 3 people, everybody's like, God, I'm starving. And you go out to eat every
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And I don't know what it is. I think it's just, some deep thing in who we are. Like, hey, I'm not dead. I need to eat. I need whatever it is. But there's like this morbid correlation between like seeing dead people and going
yeah,
and having to go eat. And like like I don't know what, especially autopsies, it's not the same at like death scenes or like at a car accident or something, but something about autopsies, and they're cutting and they're doing all the things. And I made a horrible joke one time, but it was still pretty funny. Is we were in South Carolina, I'm like, oh look, ribs. And but yeah, and that was the running joke. Like we would go to ribs after, for barbecue. And,
yeah,
but that's the and that's a very mild example of some of the
yes, yes.
ways you deal with very intense type stress, that you're seeing someone dead that's being cut open and their heart is weighed and trying to figure out what happened. Very, very serious things. But
Oh,
yeah, it's
yes.
hard to deal with.
What if, so doing what I do, right, as a mental health clinician, I had this very like compassionate side for people that died by suicide. And that used to be one of our main arguments. I was like, you're so cold, you're so cynical. Like my husband was going to start a company where he rented guns, 24-hour gun return. And he's like, I'll just go by and pick them up after they die. Right. Like very dark. And I was like, what? But, by the end of our career in law enforcement, I was making jokes with him because I was just as tainted, if you will. Like
Hmm.
my mindset shifted over the years, and we could laugh about that.
Hmm.
Not everybody's going to be that way, right?
Many,
But
many of those jokes will get you very weird looks in many circles. But
which is why we keep to our own circles, right?
right, the
I was going to
context
say,
clues are important.
yeah. So my admin, Nicole, is a former police officer, grew up in a law enforcement family, and her husband is in the military. And so she and I can joke about some things that I will not mention here, but and we were joking one day about something and she's like, "Oh no, my husband actually has camera evidence of that from looking at things via the radar and da 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 da." And I was like, "No way, we're going to talk about that later."
I know exactly
But
what you're talking about. You don't need to tell me anymore. There's some
so
legends.
yeah. So yeah, I think part of it, like how do we as a couple support that? I think
Hmm.
once again we have to talk about like what we're comfortable with, but I think the first part of that is connecting and the compassion, like the cultural competency and understanding. Like
Hmm.
this is what the brain is scanning for. It has to figure out how to deal with what it's dealing with. And so it thinks about, huh, let's go. There's some ribs. Those would taste good if I was eating, right? However you want
Right.
to, right? You find that. And as a spouse, it might be hard to shift at times. It doesn't mean that it's hard to get out of the cynical aspect, right? I think my biggest mistake, or one of my mistakes, was that I used to say, well, have you ever thought it could be this way? And my husband would be like, "Are you kidding me? Do you know how many people?" Right? And he would justify everything that he had seen.
Hmm.
Eventually, what's funny is now I will be cynical, and he turns around and he goes, "Well, now we can spin that around and look at this, and maybe there's a different story to it." I'm like, "Shut up. Where's your
Yeah.
cynicism?"
Yeah.
Um, so I think part
So
of it
it's
is
it's it's
talking
it's
about it.
ebbing on him and maintaining with you.
I think there's also a point that we have to reflect and say, is that the person I want to be? Right?
Hmm.
Because staying in that mindset or being impacted is one thing. And then do you want to incorporate a different side of your humanity when you're off duty or off shift or home or whatever, right? So what you feed gets fed, it grows, right? So if you're being fed a lot of both BS, I swear a lot and I just don't know. It's fine.
Hey,
Anyway,
we're not on the radio. We started
okay.
on the
Yeah,
radio
I
and we
know. I know,
have
but
the
some people are like,
beeping.
no, I want a
But
rated
hey,
G
the
podcast.
podcast. This is a real veteran in law enforcement community. If they don't hear swearing, I think they would be concerned.
Okay. Yeah. So your friend, right? So I mean, even Gil Martin has the whole assholes and bullshit aspect,
Hmm.
right? That's a protective mindset, and that doesn't turn off. However, if I go around believing everybody falls into that category of an asshole, I'm not going to have a whole lot of friends, right?
Exactly.
I'm going to have a really negative impact, and the brain is impacted by all that negativity, and negativity feeds the negativity, and you get enough of that at work, so let's feed it in a different way. But that doesn't mean you can't have some weird, like, hey, you should have seen the wallpaper I saw today after the right. Those kinds
It's
of things are
interesting.
fine. The dark humor is fine. It's the regular mindset of like, I'm a victim and people are attacking me and everybody's bad, like those overgeneralizations that cause a problem.
One of the bigger things that I see, and I've sort of experienced this with, and I have a lot of friends that we've talked about it, is
Hmm.
the banality of everyday life compared to your personal and your professional life. So, and I think that's one of the challenges, folks. You go home and you're talking with their spouse, and they're talking about wallpaper, or Becky and Susie were having an argument,
Yeah.
and they talk about all these people you've never met and with a backstory, and you absolutely could care less. But you're
Yes.
trying to be a supportive listener, and so you're trying to bridge that gap between the professional world and your home world
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
banality of everyday life that is very important to many people, that especially spouses. That is their life. And ex especially extended families. So you're trying to deal and understand people that never moved. This is their thing. And they just
Right.
don't get
Right.
what you're dealing with, but they're, hey, Susie and Becky, if they don't like each other because, back in 12th grade, blah 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 blah, like 30 years ago. Okay. So how does your book help a spouse become a safer bridge for their partner rather than someone they have to shield or, because I know we talked a little bit about it, but I guess there's two parts to that question. One is, the protecting them from the craziness of, hey, how they're reacting, but also recognizing that, hey, there's a whole different world they're coming from, and their uh, tolerance for which is could be described as nonsense. And I'll try not to say it's nonsense because it's important to some people, but it's certainly not life or death. And they're used to that kind of adrenaline jump and everything. And then Susie and Becky's 30-year bickering is of less importance. So that's a long way to ask
No, I got
probably a
it.
simple question.
No, it's not a simple question. I think it has multiple parts. So let me address the first part, which is the inaneness of everyday life
Yeah.
versus, right, the like this is what you're worried about, which is a regular conflict, right?
Hmm.
So it's a regular conflict, and I think it is a problem. It's a huge, like, raise the flag kind of problem, because do I would flip it around and say, well, but do you want your family and your spouse to have to experience what you're experiencing? And
No.
100% of the time, everybody says no. So is it then fair to judge them, because that's what you're doing? Is it fair to judge them for living in a different world that they deem this as stress and chaotic versus what you deem as stress and chaotic? It's not. It's not fair to judge them. You can't have it both ways. You
Hmm.
can't say, like, oh, this is what you're worried about. I want to protect you, but now I'm judging the fact that you are in this protected world, right? That's not
Right.
really fair. So I think it's a couple of things. Like, one, I think that if that's your world, is the dark, the chaos, the real life and death situation, you have to be willing to share it. You have to be willing to say, like, hey, this is my world, and not just, I'm going to use the word victim, play victim, that, like, oh, well, I have a hard job. Yes, you do absolutely have a hard job. And you know what? Your hard doesn't mean that I can't understand that that is hard. Um, the the problem, if you don't do that, is you become isolated,
Hmm.
and then that's going to increase your mental health. That's going to increase cause for divorce. That's going to be like, oh, I'm going to go connect with somebody who does get me. Like, I always
Hmm.
pick on dispatchers, poor dispatchers. Um, but
It's a
I'm going to,
meme for a reason. Or as my tried to
and I
convince my
work
kids,
with
it's a
them.
meme.
I work with them a lot, and they
And ER
understand. But
nurses.
yeah, yes, yes. Anyway, you get what I mean. Like, I'm going to go connect with somebody who gets me more. Well, the
Hmm.
problem is you weren't willing to share.
Hmm.
We're not so fragile that we can't get it or understand. But if you don't open up and share, if you don't have the courage to maybe give us some grace that we can get it and understand, that's not fair.
Hmm.
So there's
No,
that.
that's absolutely correct. So
Um,
the Go ahead. I'm
okay,
sorry,
I
I
was going to say the
interrupted you.
second question was about how does the book address that? Do you want
Well,
to
how would
do that
you,
now?
yeah, yeah.
Do what?
How'd the book? I did ask about the book and a safe bridge for the partner to sort of understand on both sides of that relationship. Because,
Yeah.
you know, I've sat through conversations, and my wife is a former law enforcement, and there's all sorts of factors that are probably different with me than anyone else, and everybody's different. And that's the other half
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
what's their exposure, what's their experience, things like that. And like we've never had a babysitter because my wife worked crimes against children
Sure. Sure.
and would not. Like all my
I
youngest is
get it.
16. We've never had a babysitter. Just
Yep.
not even to go like out. Her mom was here and that's one thing, but that was it. And yeah, that just those are the type of things. And so I would use her as the other half, like the relationship law, like, hey, there's some quirks because a lot of people like, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
teenager down the road is fine, or some rando that I met off Facebook is fine. I'm like, it's insane to me, but there are people that do this, and for me, it's unthinkable. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that don't think the same way.
And I would say probably the majority of those that military and first responders are married to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, at least in my experience, they're like, oh no, I totally get why they think that way. But let's say they don't, right? Part of that is helping the spouse understand the world that you're exposed to day in and day out and what's the
Mm-hmm.
impact of that. And they may not like it. It may be inconvenient. It may be annoying at times. It may be like a cheese grater on the skin. And I think that if you have a conversation, I know if you have compassion around it and understanding, then you can come up with a compromise. You can come up with like some solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But what doesn't work is to just dictate, right?
Yeah.
We're absolutely never going to have a babysitter. Well, I'm sorry, but I want to go out every now and then with you without the 4-year-old. So how are we going to make that work? Right? Nope, we're just going to stay home. That doesn't work. Not everybody has family.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to problem solve. You've got to, like, you can understand both points of view. I can understand that you
Huge.
don't want a babysitter, and you can understand that I want some alone time with you and I want to go out and have adult time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then now if we both understand where we're coming from, how do we figure out a solution? And that most of the time our military and first responders are great for figuring out solutions.
Yeah.
They're fix-it people.
And then you have
So
kids that grow up with that. They don't like the rules. And then as they get older, they realize why there were such rules about
absolutely.
where they could go and how they could do it and everything else. So you
Right.
mentioned relationships shouldn't be 50-50. They should be 100%, 100%, which I am the biggest fan of. I've always advocated for that because
Yeah.
if 50-50 is like, it's so easy to go, yeah, I do my half, now you do your half, and we need to measure, who's doing more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the source of the greatest conflicts
Yeah.
of I feel underappreciated. I feel like I'm doing everything. And it'll vary depending on who. But if the other person is doing 100% and you're trying to do 100%, you get much further, and it really reduces the main causes of divorce of feeling unappreciated, etc. So why is that distinction so critical, especially for our military and law enforcement folks who are managing some of this asymmetric stress?
So I think because everybody's 100% looks different,
Hmm.
right? So my husband brings a different set of skills to our relationship than I do. And so when he gives his 100%, it looks different than if he was just giving 50%. His 100%, he may be a little fastidious, is what I like to say. He may like a time clock, and he makes sure everything's to the thing. So we're at we're going out of town tomorrow because I'm gonna go speak. And so what he does, it drives me bananas, but I have grown to appreciate it.
Hmm.
He is very list oriented, task oriented, time oriented, and he has to make sure it's all lines up. I am very fly by the seat of my pants. I may have shown up to an airport gate at the very last minute sliding into the door, right?
Yeah,
So, but there's an aspect like him bringing his 100% looks different,
it
right? So
does.
my 100% looks different. In our relationship, um, I could have held out. I could have held out in certain areas of understanding him where he didn't understand me. In our relationship, there were definitely times where I was utilizing my skills and abilities to keep us connected and together
Hmm.
that he didn't have or understand yet, right? So I kind of always I tell my clients a lot of times, I'm like, you got to keep your side of the street clean. You got to
Hmm.
be the best version of yourself. So if something goes wrong, you can't go, well, if I knew to do this, but I didn't do it, right? So I think I say that not just for chores and tasks and how are you showing up, because that can definitely be different, right? So if you're
Yeah, that's
coming
the
home,
starting outside point.
Yeah. Like if you're coming home and you're not participating, I mean, I don't think that's really being your 100%. I think you're just kind of leaning on somebody else's 100%. Um, so I don't think it's 50-50. It can't be 50-50. It's never going to be equal. I think that if we all show up as the best version of ourselves in the capacity that we're capable of showing up, then we figure it out. And part of that is, like I said, your spouse may bring another skill set to the table. And sometimes we don't always value that skill set, but we have to appreciate that skill set. So one of that skill sets is protection from mine. And that's not something I always valued until I went on a trip one day and I was like, we were out of town and I said, God, I wish you were carrying right now. And right. And I'm like, you're wearing shorts and flip-flops. Why do you need to carry? Like, I live in Texas. It's hot, right?
Yeah, it's hot.
So, and at the same time, like, I'm going to be
You
really
never know
glad
when
that
that
he
sketchy
thought of that.
situation's going to pop up.
Yeah. And aren't I going to be glad it, and not only that, but if I didn't allow him to do that and something happened to me, he
It would
would
kill
be
you.
left with, I didn't show up with my 100% because I compromised myself. Right. So
That wasn't
I
my
think,
authentic self.
yeah, yeah. So that's why I think it's like 100-100. I don't think there's a thing as 50-50. If you're
No,
50-50, you're half-assing it.
yeah, that's a great way to put it because it is amazing. Like my wife and I love to travel, and we travel a lot, and we have 3 kids, and sometimes they come with us, sometimes they don't. But I plan everything. Like when we're going, the flights, and she is the passenger princess of just show up at the airport and we go. But the rest of our lives, she's pretty much running things. She
Yeah.
runs the calendars, she runs, where the kids need to be. And so when we're going on vacation or we're traveling or something, I plan it out
Mm-hmm.
and like all the steps, and all she has to do is show up. And that is not who I am. I am very much a reactive, oh yeah, what's going on this weekend? It's Thursday night. Ah, let's do this. On Saturday morning. Like, hey, let's do this. Like there's no
Yeah. Yeah.
plan. It's not on the calendar. And but that is how I show up is, hey, when we're doing this, I do that. So you don't need to worry about it because she handles the scheduling all the time. And I need schedulers. I need my Amy and Cyndi who keep me on the straight and narrow on with talking with you and everything else is because I know that is a deficit of mine because I am very much focused on things I'm doing at work and things I'm doing elsewhere, and I have to like segment those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I'm giving everybody 100%, and that takes more time than I think sometimes. And boom, oh, yep, that scheduling part. Whereas a lot of military people are very regimented. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. But I've also realized that the more senior you are, the more you're gonna be late
Oh,
because
okay.
you're giving your 100% to each person and group you're
Oh,
with.
sure.
And so, if a general officer is coming or, some senior political person, they're always late. It's because that's the nature of the job,
Mm-hmm.
is to give that person you're with at the time the 100%.
Mm.
And so if you're a little bit late, it's hard to be rude. These are challenges that folks are dealing with. And so,
Yeah.
you got to take all those things and mash them together. But I love the 100% and the 100%. Folks, we've been talking with Cyndi Doyle. She's a licensed counselor. She's down in Texas. She's a police wife and an author. The book is Hold the Line, The Essential Guide to Protecting Your Law Enforcement Relationship. Cyndi, we've talked about a number of things. I'm sure I've asked, we could talk for hours, but your time is valuable. What is it you want to leave us with?
I think what I want you to know is that training doesn't turn off just when they go off shift, off duty, come home, right? Training comes home with them. Their experiences come home with them. And we need to understand the biological and the psychological aspects of the training that keeps them safe and coming home and have a compassion and understanding for it. As a couple, we need to understand and then adjust to how that training impacts us and what do we want to do about it? How do we adjust for it? How do we accommodate it? Actually, I say adjust, don't accommodate is what I say. And is it difficult? Yeah, hell yeah. It's hard. This life is hard. There is a lot of adjustments. There's a lot of loneliness. And both of you are probably feeling lonely in your own way, and you just don't talk about it because you're busy protecting each other. So what I encourage you to do is have some conversations, talk about where you're feeling lonely, talk about where you can connect, have some compassion with each other. And like I said, always counter the impact and make your, I like to say, like, take more from retirement than you gave, like as a couple, because you sacrifice together. So, hey, take the retirement together and figure out how you're going to get through it with your eye on the prize of having that relationship at the end.
I love that final part. I've been around the Army since I was 17 years old, and the first thing I tell folks is the Army is going to get everything it wants out of you. Make sure you get as much as you possibly can out of the Army. And that's the same thing with law enforcement, the same thing with every organization. That because you are serving, but at the same time, there's so many opportunities to do things and to have opportunities. Get as much of it as you can when you're there, because they're going to get what they need out of you, no matter what.
They are. Yeah.
And so when you can get it and you can grab it, and especially for the rest of your life, you're going to be getting something. Hey, put it in the past. Boom, you did these cool things. But yeah, get as much as you possibly can. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well. And thank you again for writing the book. It's a great thing for a lot of people to go look at. And of course, go check out the website. It's codeforcouples.com. We'll put a link in the show notes so you don't have to write it if you're listening as you're driving along. Hopefully you have downloaded the podcast. Go like, listen, and all those things they tell you to do with podcasts. But we'll put the link to the book and to the website in the show notes so you don't have to go hunt for it. And Cyndi, again, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us this week on Coming Home Well with Dr. Tyler Piron. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well, this is Coming Home Well.